It's Triple Deluxe. Liking the video, commenting on the video, subscribing to the channel, whatever. I'm not picky, that all helps too. Ring the bell after subscribing, please. The bell's in this game. That's... Let's just get this over with. Kirby's having a fun-filled day, but like everything, it comes to an end when the sun sets. Decided that it's bedtime, Kirby dons the original sleep hat. That's pretty neat. Anyway, Kirby heads to bed, but wakes up the next day to see a huge beanstalk has encompassed his house. Stuck high in the sky, Kirby runs outside and notices that Castle Dedede is under attack by a mysterious spider named Tyranza. Easily defeating the Waddle Dees, he captures Dedede and flies off with him. Kirby, always willing to help a buddy out, gives chase and tries to rescue Dedede, help Kirby platform through various different worlds and save the princess. I mean Dedede. Triple Deluxe was, and frankly still is, a big deal for the series. Return to Dreamland may have been a necessary step to get Kirby all caught up to the modern day, but Triple Deluxe was the game to actually go the extra mile and give the series the oomph that it really needed. This wasn't just an older game on newer hardware, this is a Kirby game using advancements in technology to fill it to the brim with personality, love, care, and life. Oftentimes, when you hear praise being given towards Triple Deluxe, the first thing getting praise is the style, and it's easy to see why. From the very beginning, where the sun shines light onto the first level, and the dandelions breeze past you in both the foreground and the background, to the very end where... You thought it was gonna spoil the final boss? Nuh-uh. Anyway, start to finish, the game is so jam-packed, full of love and care, that it makes you feel happy. Pick any part of the game and people can tell you something that happened. Like the haunted house towards the end of World 2, or the train tracks with the giant Wildly trains, or entering the enemy's fortress at the beginning of the final world, breaking the door down. Every level has something memorable that happens in it. Complementing the gorgeous visuals is one of the most memorable soundtracks in the entire series. I've said this a few times, but if this is your first video in the series, hi. But also, music isn't something I like to include in videos like these, since taste in music is way too personal. Triple Deluxe may have the best soundtrack ever, or the worst, that kinda depends on the person. But what the music here does do is fit the visuals and atmosphere fantastically. It stands out from other soundtracks while still feeling very much in tune with Kirby, resulting in a fan favorite that still stands out to this day. Triple Deluxe owes a lot of its strong presentation to the theming of the game. As you can tell by the beanstalk being prominent throughout, this game loves fantasy. And I don't mean traditional fantasy like the Green Plains and guarded castles, although it does have those, don't you worry, but rather I mean it loves the fantastical. Things that inspire and give off awe and wonder, but still work in a more fantasy-based setting like Kirby. There's jungles, ancient pyramids, volcanoes, amusement parks, haunted houses, circuses, snowy plains, igloos, the works. The game lives and breathes that fantasy and invites you into the wonderful world it creates. Triple Deluxe is also the only Kirby game to actually take advantage of the platform it's on for visual and gameplay benefits. Sure, the Curse games, that sounds funny, and Mass Attack were touch control only, but Triple Deluxe incorporates the 3D elements not only in letting you hop between layers on the screen, but also for adding depth to enemy placements. If you see 3 enemies, for example, and 2 of them have slightly different depth to them, you know which one will actually hurt you. The 3D slider of all things really helps with this, not only making it look a lot cooler, but also making it easier to tell which enemies you should stay away from. This is such a core element to the Triple Deluxe experience that it pulls this off even better than its direct sequel, Planet Robobot. That game may have a different focus, but it still forces in hopping between layers in an attempt to recreate the magic of Triple Deluxe. But you don't just recreate magic, hence why this is the best instead of that one. Nothing against Planet Robobot, but if this game is warm and welcoming, then Planet Robobot is rustic and cold. Which is good, but if you had to pick one, it's no surprise you'd pick Triple Deluxe. It has other things going for it too. The side modes are fun, offering totally different experiences compared to the main game. Bosses and mini-bosses also hop between layers, making them feel like an integrated part of the world, rather than just something for gameplay. Hypernova is even more comically destructive than the super abilities, and the game does not hide that. The cutscenes that play when you use it, they go on and on and on. And of course, this was the first game to give us a real deep lore dump towards the end of the game, and started the trend of Kirby games going absolutely insane with the final bosses. But the welcoming love of the game is the real light that makes it shine as bright as it does, and is why Triple Deluxe is the best game in this series. Hey everybody, this is very different from what we normally do. I just wanted to do this because I hear a lot of times that Triple Deluxe was the first Kirby game to have memorable set pieces, and I hear a lot of people say things like, you can't tell me what happened in this room in this area of this game. So I'm here to say, Kirby's Dream Land, the second room of Castle Lololo, is the room where when you move forward, there are a bunch of doors and masks that chase after you. You can go backwards to try to find a power-up, or you can go forward and progress to get through. Kirby's Adventure, Grape Garden 1, that level starts, you run to the right, you're on top of a bunch of clouds. It is not to be mistaken with one of the levels in Yogurt Yard, where you can get stoned and fall down. Grape Gardens 1, you can actually get UFO in. And then at the end of the level, you can move to the right. There's kind of like a workaround that you gotta do. You go up and to the left a little bit, then you run on the top for a little bit while dodging tornado enemies. You go around. On the bottom, there's a Waddle Doo and a Sir Kibble. You can mix for them, or you can just go to the goal, get Beam, get Cutter, whatever you want to do. Let's do like a really obscure one. Okay, Kirby Squeak Squad. Level 1-1, you start, you can run to the right for a while. There's, of course, that classic Kirby wall you gotta go over. The first enemy, I believe, is Beam. That's the first enemy. It's either Beam or one of the Burning Leos, or Hotheads, not Burning Leos. But you can also, there's an area with like 3 little wooden platforms that you can hop on, so you don't get the bubbles in the first level, but that's just something for Squeak Squad. Return to Dreamland, because everybody really loves to say that that's a really generic game. Let's do 90 Noon 3. That one's very memorable, despite what I just said. 90 Noon 3 is the one with the wind blowing, and you gotta go up. You can grab onto those platforms. So, if you're wondering why the heck I'm doing this and why this is going on for so long, Triple Deluxe, just because it looks pretty does not mean it is the only game with memorable set pieces. They are loaded throughout the entire series. And they make do with not just looking pretty, but also playing very well, which, as we'll get into, Triple Deluxe kind of struggles with. Channel familiars, you guys thought I was going to start with Hypernova, huh? No, I like to shake things up around here. But on that note, let's actually talk Hypernova. You all know I hate it with a burning passion, but surely it's just a me thing, right? No, Hypernova's actually gotten a fair amount of flack from people for a while. A lot of it is for reasons that I typically bring up, but one negative that I always find interesting is that it doesn't really feel like it fits. In Return to Dreamland, a game about modernizing Kirby, the super abilities made perfect sense. In Planet Robobot, a game about sci-fi-ing fantasy, it made sense to give Kirby a mech. In Star Allies, a game about friendship, it made sense to be friendship. But what about the fantasy theming, or anything that Triple Deluxe really stands for, fits with inhaling? You can make an argument for the Hypernova fruit fitting with fantasy, maybe, but not the actual act of inhaling. This is really big deal because Triple Deluxe is all about the theming. There's certainly not a lot going on with the gameplay, which we'll get to, but Triple Deluxe really tries to sell itself with a strong presentation. An apt comparison here is Kirby's Dream Land 3. That's more traditional than things like Epic Yarn and Rainbow Curse, for example. And the reason why Dream Land 3 actually stands out a lot more is that there's really nothing quite like Dream Land 3. And it's the same with Epic Yarn and Rainbow Curse, but you're working with me here, okay? Triple Deluxe has to compete with Planet Robobot, Star Allies, and even Return to Dreamland, not to mention however many spin-offs we have in this era. But while Planet Robobot still gets to have an identity all of its own, Triple Deluxe doesn't. And I know that Dreamland 2 and Dreamland 3 have a lot of similarities, but there's so many minute differences. You can watch both of those videos that I did if you want to know more, that, no, they are very different. But again, Triple Deluxe tries, but the fantasy theming is really nothing special, and that's because every Kirby game is a fantasy game. Yeah, it's good looking and all that, but the theming and tropes are all things that we've seen in other games, and they aren't done in a particularly interesting way. In that regard, I'd compare it to Kirby 64, except 64 handles itself far better, since it has things like cool camera angles, an actually unique look, really charming story presentation, and levels and themes that are actually done in an interesting way. The lore dump here is It's there, but it's just dumped on you at the very end of the game. It's not the only game that has this problem, but because the others have more going for them, it's easier to ignore and have fun with the fun. Triple Deluxe, not so much. The real shot in the leg for this game, though, is the pacing. Now, I've said this for a few games in these videos, and I fear that I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but Triple Deluxe is the worst offender of them all because, unlike those games, Triple Deluxe is, again, all about the charm. Not to say everything else is horrendous, but it's clear as day that the selling point of Triple Deluxe is its ability to win you over with its pleasant visuals and music. And if those fail, that's it. There's nothing else. Zilch. Nada. Abilities were nerfed from Return. This being a 3DS game makes the screen size smaller. Unlockables were made necessary. There is no way to track which rare keychains you still need to get without a guide. Keychains themselves introduce a factor of RNG that this series has never had to worry about. In-game cutscenes happen far more, despite the pre-rendered cutscenes being as rare as ever. Movement is still similar to Returns in that it's slowed down compared to older games, while also reverting back to those older games in weird ways, like not being able to carry ability stars anymore. The items in general have mostly been removed, and the few that remain or were introduced barely have a presence throughout the game at all. But let's pull up bookends and bring it all back to the Hypernova. I've rambled about Hypernova in the past, but having to watch long, drawn-out cutscenes in half the levels in the whole game and solving some of the slowest, most bare-bone puzzles is the absolute worst. I'd go on, but I understand some complaints can be a bit more personal, even if most of them really aren't. I'm just kind of saving you from another clamoring Claire Kirby fan tirade. But the worst part, all of these issues by themselves, they're not too bad. If those issues were either gone or less prevalent, I feel like even the Hypernova wouldn't really be that bad. But when they're in the same game, things stand out a lot more. All in all, Triple Deluxe tries, and you have to give it that. It's got the gung-ho. But every other Kirby game tries and succeeds much more than this game could ever hope to, so why bother with it? Older games stand out more visually with the same appealing gameplay that this has, while newer games literally have the same gameplay that it has, while making the necessary strides that modern games benefit from, while doing a much better job with their theming. Planet Robobot especially, the game is just right there, but that game being better doesn't make Triple Deluxe the worst. It's everything else that we've talked about that makes Triple Deluxe the worst game in the series. I don't know, like a good third of the server was thirsty for bees. That's what my Discord server thinks about Triple Deluxe. There you go. More seriously, while was a thing, the majority of the server really likes Triple Deluxe, citing its personality and memorable levels as the #1 reason why the game is as good as it is. Other things, like the boss rush modes and nostalgia, were also cited reasons. Not everyone was super keen on it, but the majority were. I'm still kind of surprised that we're this deep in, and Superstar Ultra is still the only one that was positive start to finish. But boy, howdy am I happy about that. I know we're all having fun with the, sorta, daily uploads of August, but I am forward-looking. I want to go really in-depth with my thoughts on Triple Deluxe, not a best or worst style thing, in an entirely separate video. One far more personal than something like this, so I'm sorry if I keep this final bit brief for now. To make a long story short, yes, I like the game. I think it's pretty heckin' great at times, actually. But what it does wrong bothers me like you would not believe, resulting in a very mixed bag. Some of my favorite aspects of the entire franchise, like its music and personality, are all center stage. It makes better use of the foreground and background concept, even better than Planet Robobot, and the set pieces really stand out. Unfortunately, this all came at the cost of one of the most important aspects of the series, its pacing. I talked about Hypernova before, and I even somehow got through saying nice things about it, even though they could very easily not be interpreted as nice things, but the entire game feels slower than both previous and later entries. Again, I don't want to get into too much, but to make a long story short, this game is good. Most of what I look for in a Kirby game was totally butchered, but it's fine. Everything's fine. It's all fine!